And we want to take a closer look now at how this phase one of the Gaza ceasefire deal could play out over the next few days. As soon as the Israeli cabinet approves the deal this afternoon, the ceasefire immediately goes into effect, and Israeli troops will have 24 hours to withdraw to an agreed line. At the same time, Israel will allow hundreds of aid trucks every day to enter Gaza, bringing much-needed supplies. Hamas, for their part, have 72 hours to release the 20 remaining living hostages, which means this should happen by Monday at the latest. The return of the remains of the deceased hostages may take longer, as Hamas says it does not know the location of the bodies in some cases. DW correspondent Emily Gordine is in Jerusalem for us. Emily, does joy prevail right now in Israel that a deal has been agreed, or is there also criticism?
Well, ordinary Israelis are incredibly happy that the hostages are finally set to come back. That being said, it is also mixed with a degree of disbelief, I think, that the day that so many of them have been waiting for is finally here. Many Israelis have been campaigning for weeks, for months really, for almost 2 years now, for the release of the hostages and ultimately an end to this war. And especially over the last few weeks, there had been growing concern that even far-right ministers in their own coalition government could derail a deal that would bring back the hostages. Crucially among those far-right ministers are Bezalel Smotrich, leader of the religious Zionist party, and he himself the finance minister in this Israeli government. He has put out a statement saying that while he supports the release of the Israeli hostages, he opposes the deal if it halts the war permanently, if it releases Palestinian dangerous, as he puts it, Palestinian prisoners, and if it signals a return to peace negotiations, which he sees as a risk to Israel's security. Now, while Donald Trump's 20-point plan is still fairly vague and the points are very broad, these points do essentially feature in this plan. Now, the question is whether Bezalel Smotrich will take his party out of this coalition government or not. At this point, it's not clear. What we do know, though, that if he does leave the government and if his colleague from another far-right party, from the leader is Ben Gvir here, Itamar Ben Gvir, the national security minister, if he also leaves the government and this government collapses, then the opposition leaders in Israel have already signaled that they will cast a safety net over this government to make sure this deal is fulfilled, is completed to the end.
And Emily, tell us a little bit more about the reaction in Gaza. Well,
Palestinians are jubilant at the prospect of an end to this war. The territory has essentially been razed to the ground as a result of Israeli airstrikes. The territory, the 67 people as it stands today, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, have been killed in this war. That is an incredible toll. It will take decades to rebuild the territory. That's already clear. And even at the moment, we know that Israeli strikes continue to rain onto northern Gaza. A reminder to many Palestinians that this war is, first of all, not over yet. Second of all, there are fears that even if a ceasefire is agreed upon now, Israel will resume its offensive once the Israeli hostages are released. And if the ceasefire does persist, if it is in place, that we could see a similar situation unfold as in Lebanon, where a ceasefire is in place, but regular Israeli airstrikes do still occur on Lebanese territory.
DW correspondent Emily Gordine in Jerusalem. Thank you. And German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that he was optimistic about developments in Gaza. Let's listen.
Developments in Israel give us cause for optimism. There is clearly a significant opportunity to reach an agreement with Hamas in the coming hours. There's a chance that the hostages will be released this week and that the Israeli army will withdraw from the Gaza Strip, as proposed in the 20-point plan put forward by the US president and the Israeli government. Hopes, also with regard to Israel and Gaza, increased once again last night. But it's not really over yet. In this respect, we are of course monitoring the situation very closely and remain very confident that a solution will be found there this week.
And meanwhile, Israel has apparently continued its attacks in the Gaza Strip after the ceasefire deal was announced. Huge clouds of smoke were observed over the territory this morning. The Israeli military says it is making operational preparations to implement the first phase of the Gaza deal. Israel has told Palestinians that northern Gaza remains a dangerous combat zone. DW Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes is here with me in the studio. And Shani, to that point, I mean, we know in the hours before a ceasefire deal comes into effect, these are very tense hours. What are you expecting now?
Well, as you were saying, Israel is still operating militarily, trying to maybe make sure that it gets the last strategic points, or that they can still hold on to when it comes to securing the withdrawal in the next deal, in the next days. Sorry. So this is what's happening on the other side. Of course, for the Palestinians, it's still very much a dangerous zone. And there's also a fear in Israel. It has happened in the past that Hamas will try to maybe launch a last attack to sort of show his defiance. So it's still very few tense moments that we are expecting, but hopefully by the afternoon, once Israeli cabinet has approved the deal, ceasefire will be, declared, or at least we know the preparations for such by the military. We will get into higher gear, and then hopefully there's going to be quiet.
And how controversial is this deal, Shani, within the Israeli government, especially considering that some ministers have pushed for the war to continue?
Well, actually, when negotiations started just a few days ago, the expectation was it's going to be much harder for Netanyahu to get the votes, to get the support of the extreme right members of his government. But they seem to be willing to let that happen. It could be that it's in response to the very big public demand, the growing outcry in the Israeli public that is very much demanding to see the hostages back, or maybe an understanding that, the American pressure is so mighty and so strong that there is very little that Israel can actually do in a pushback. There's no doubt that Israel needs this time now. Whether the fighting will eventually be resumed or not, that still yet remains to be seen. But this break right now comes to Israel in a very good timing.
And, for Hamas's part, they have agreed now to the terms here in phase one, but there are many questions about their future as well.
Well, I think correct. And I think that the fact that both Israel and Hamas are willing to agree, or manage to agree, on the first phase of the deal without actually bothering to clear out all the bigger hurdles, the big gaps that are still left for the second phase. It's just to show you where both sides are, in the sense that they both need this time off. They also are both under great pressure from the Arab allies and negotiators, and also from the Americans. And the fear is that if it's not, I think the fear that I hear from people on both sides is that it was a feeling that it's now or never. We're going to spiral out of control if we don't take this lifeline that the Americans and negotiating teams are offering us now. And I think we are all quite relieved to see that there's some common sense and an ability to let that prevail and go ahead with calming things down and de-escalating.
And talk with us a little bit about the pressure that has been exerted to get the parties here, in fact, because, we have seen so many proposals actually thrown on the table. We've seen so many negotiations kicked off, then breaking down over the past 2 years. What has made this deal now different?
Well, I think if we trace it back to, we're trying to find a pivotal moment, I think the Israeli attack in Doha, in Qatar, trying to strike and basically eliminate all of Hamas leadership that is there in the Qatari capital. I think that was a very crucial moment, because I think it was a signal to how things can go very much array, how far Israel has gone from its goals in Gaza, and maybe is losing its trajectory. At least that's what the Americans have said, realizing this could be very much dangerous and bring the whole region into an even wider war, and even more painful war. And I think the Americans, for them, it was a wake-up call. I think definitely for Qatar and other Arab allies, they have managed to galvanize around this and actually leverage that and bring Trump with them into seeing this as a moment that needs to be seized, in a moment that is an opportunity for something else in the region. If you talk to Israelis, they do acknowledge that attack was very controversial, but the way they see it, they feel like it was a win-win moment for them. It would have either bring out, take out all of Hamas leadership, or it would have brought the effect that we are seeing now, sort of the shock effect that made things the way Israel sees it possible, and it made also Hamas realize they're never safe and they need to start talking about making concrete compromises when it comes to talking to Israel negotiations.
It would be such a huge moment if we see the release of Palestinian prisoners and also the release of the Israeli hostages. Beyond that, as they would move into phase two, how big of a challenge do you think it's going to be to keep these parties at the table, given the respective political situations that they have?
Well, I think there's still a lot we don't know about, for example, the guarantees that each side have gotten, in order to go ahead with the first phase of the plan without knowing enough about what would be the end plan of, the end goal of this plan, what would be the second phase. So there's no doubt that both the Qataris and maybe Turkey have, and of course, Trump had to vouch and promise both sides that they are committed to this process in whole, both phases, the immediate one of a ceasefire and the long-term one. So we don't quite know enough about what has been promised there and what are the, what's on the table in that aspect. But I think it's quite clear that both sides are in a moment that they realize this is a momentum and they need to try and capture it. And I think we will see also, as long as we will see Trump and the negotiating countries very much pushing forward and trying to, work with this momentum, there's a good chance we could see this actually coming to, an end in the sense of the day after for Gaza, a better day for Gaza, a better day for the way Trump sees it. He wants, his plan goes far beyond Gaza into the whole Middle East and trying to build a new vision for it.
So in the end, maybe it's all about the leverage that is exerted. Tell us a little bit more, Shani, remind us. I mean, the sticking points are well known, and they have been there for decades.
Correct. I mean,
how do you see those potentially being overcome?
Well, let's just mention them. The key one is disarmament of Hamas. Hamas, has been saying in his responses so far that any of this armament that they will be agreeing to will have to take part as part, when they basically dissolve into a new Palestinian entity. So not fully giving away arms. We're not quite sure about that. We're not quite sure about what would be the mechanism of governing of Gaza, who will be part of it, how much of it will be completely Palestinian.
But we know it's in the American plan.
Correct.
Do you see the potential for Hamas to agree to that?
Well, I think it really depends on what kind of guarantees and assurances they get from Qatar, from Turkey, from other Arab countries, or what kind of limitations and red lines those countries are going to set to them, saying, you have done so far what you've done, now you got to move aside and let the Palestinian people start recovering and move on.
And just briefly on the Israeli side?
Well, I think Israelis are very much, they need to do what Trump tells them to do. I think Israel has very little leverage there, and I think that as long as Trump will push, they will have to comply.
DW Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And now let's hear what people in Gaza are saying about the news.
For sure, it's a feeling of joy. We have been in this war and suffering for 2 years. As soon as we heard the news, we couldn't believe it because we were so happy. We had to ask for confirmation. Now we're waiting for the news to be implemented so that this war and this suffering and ethnic cleansing in Gaza ends.
This is a joy to be recorded in history. We are tired. We have been displaced, and this is the day we have been waiting for. The day of relief from God. We have been displaced more than once from one place to another. This is a godsend day of relief.
Amjad Shawa is the head of the Palestinian NGO network. A short while ago, he joined us from Deir al-Balah in the Gaza Strip, and I asked him if he shares the sense of relief and joy that we heard from the streets there.
Yes, for sure. I'm part of the people. I'm displaced as 1.9 million of the Palestinians for many times, and this time it is the worst displacement that we ever witnessed, while our city, Gaza city, is under intensive airstrikes. All the night there was kind of celebrations, expression of joy and happiness, although it was disturbed by Israeli airstrikes sometimes. Until 1 hour ago, there was airstrikes in Gaza city. And it's disturbed by this humanitarian catastrophe and warnings from the future. We're only talking about the first step, which is the swap of the prisoners. But still, there is no clarity about how aid will get in, about the number of trucks, about the displacement and the return of people who are forcibly displaced from Gaza, strip different cities and towns to their original places. It's something that we have to understand. but in principle that all of us as Palestinians relaxed and happy for this result, this agreement, in order to assure that stop killing of the Palestinian civilians and destructions. 80 to 85% of Gaza Strip destroyed and became only rubbles, and the feature of life in Gaza is collapsing. So you know that we have, for example, 55,000 orphans. They lost their father or mothers or both. There is widows, more than 40,000 widows.
Okay.
There is about 5,000 impunited children lost their limbs.
Yeah.
And there is the malnutrition, tens of thousands of children who are now fragmented and they lost the opportunity to receive medication and supplementary food. So our dreams, which under the rubbles of our homes, and we are waiting for the moment that we can be back in order to collect the bodies of our relatives, our loved ones who are under the rubbles.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that, but before I do, I'd just like to ask you for, for your sense of the situation right now on the ground, because we have been hearing that Israel's strikes have been continuing and that people are being told not to return home yet. And I'm wondering what you're hearing and what you're experiencing.
Yeah, but people are fed up from displacement. This time is very critical. I can tell you that there is hundreds of families and they have no tents, no space to stay, and they are, they are curious about what happened for their homes or the rest of the homes in Gaza City or in the north, in the north of Gaza. So that's why I'm also calling my people here and not to be back, because the Israelis will shoot them. And already 2 days ago, a family tried to return to Gaza City. They were killed. So the Israelis, they will not show any mercy on them. So please, yes, my people need for time in order to recover and to learn also that it's very risky to be returned now. So we are waiting for the moment that all of us can return and the roads will be open again, that they can manage to be back. I know that it will not be easy mission, that these people who left their homes safe and they will find it destroyed, they totally became rebels, and now they were facing new suffering page on sheltering, on finding a space to have a tent, to collect water, to collect some food here and there. But at least, as I said, to stop this killing tool that we witnessed, that will about 12% of the population growth. About 67,000 people were killed. Most of them women and children.
Right. We know that the U.S. peace plan is leaving some very big questions about Gaza's future leadership, meantime, with those conditions that you've described there. Who do you expect to be in charge when all of this is over?
Yes, good question. Already,
and forgive me, I've just been told by my producer we have just 30 seconds, so if you could tell us briefly.
Already we have the Egyptian plan for that, and it's clear that to have a technocrat committee that will govern Gaza for a while, and then we will have this elections that will go forward, the unity of the Palestinians. For the first 6-7 months or 1 year, we'll have this technocrat committee that will rule Gaza.
Ahmad, Shawa, I want to thank you so much. Apologies, we've run out of time here on the show, but we appreciate your perspective and you joining us here on DW News to share it. Head of the Palestinian NGO Network. Thank you.